1. Say because. A reason, even a small one, makes people say yes more easily. It was a quiet weekend afternoon at a cafe. A middle-aged man approached a nearly empty table, where a young woman was already seated. He smiled gently and said, "Do you mind if I sit here? Because my legs are a bit tired." She nodded and replied with a smile, "Sure, go ahead." Just one phrase, because, changed how she responded. The reason didn't need to be deep or dramatic. It just needed to exist. People are psychologically wired to respond better to requests that come with a reason. Classic studies show that even a weak explanation like, "because I'm in a hurry," doubles the chance of compliance. It's not about logic. It's about structure. A reason makes a request feel less like a demand and more like a mutual decision. That small pause, that because, gives the listener space to feel involved instead of cornered. And in that space, they usually say yes. Lesson: when you want someone to agree, don't just ask, give them a reason, even a simple one. 2. Match their breathing. When words fail, breath speaks for you. In a dim hospital hallway, a young mother sat sobbing uncontrollably. She couldn't speak. A nurse came beside her, no to comfort with words, but to simply sit. Quietly, the nurse matched the woman's breathing. Fast, panicked, shallow at first, then slowly calming, steadying. She didn't say a word, but something shifted. This is the power of breath syncing. When we match someone's breathing rhythm, we sync our nervous systems. The body begins to trust what words cannot yet express. Heart rates align. Tension softens. Presence is felt. In therapy, breath matching helps calm panic. In hospice care, it's a way to show companionship in silence. In everyday life, it's one of the gentlest, most powerful forms of human empathy. Lesson: when someone's overwhelmed, don't rush to speak. Sit beside them and just breathe. Your calm may become theirs. 3. Nod while asking. The body agrees before the mind does. At a busy street food stall, two friends were deciding what to eat. One turned and said, "Want to split the sweet potato fries?" and nodded slightly. Without thinking, the other said, "Sure," and they ordered. That tiny nod did more than it seemed. It's called the yes bias. When you nod while asking a question, the listener's brain picks up on your body's signal and mirrors it. The body says, "Yes," and the mind often follows. It's not manipulation. It's alignment. It smooths the path between suggestion and agreement. People want to agree with things that feel easy and familiar, and a nod makes the idea feel that way. Lesson: when you want someone to agree, let your body nod first. The words will follow. 4. Pause before you speak. Power lives in the waiting. In a company meeting, someone was suddenly questioned about a technical mistake. All eyes turned, but he didn't answer right away. He took a sip of water, then calmly said, "That's a good point. Let me walk through it step by step." The room shifted. People leaned in. That small pause, not too long, just intentional, made what followed feel composed, thoughtful, trustworthy. The pause didn't show weakness. It showed control. When you pause before speaking, especially under pressure, it tells the room, "I'm not reacting. I'm choosing." That's where real presence begins. And often, people don't just hear what you say next. They're ready for it. Lesson: before you speak, pause. Power isn't in the sound of your voice. It's in the silence before it. 5. Ask, "How did that make you feel?" The shortest path to depth. Two friends sat in a quiet corner booth of a coffee shop. One of them was recounting a failed job interview, trying to laugh it off. "So I finish answering this question, and the guy just stares at me like I'd spoken another language." The other paused, then asked gently, "How did that make you feel?" There was a shift. The speaker blinked. "Embarrassed, I guess. I thought I had it. But in that moment, I felt completely out of place." The conversation slowed. It deepened. Asking, "How did that make you feel?" turns a surface story into something human. It shifts the spotlight from the event to the emotion, from the outside to the inside. Most people don't get asked this question often. When they do, they soften. They reflect. In therapy, this is one of the most powerful tools, but in everyday connection, it works just as well when offered sincerely and without pressure. Lesson: if you want to connect deeply, ask how it felt, not just what happened. 6. Say, "Can you help me understand?" Diffuse conflict without backing down. Late in the day, a manager sat across from an employee who was clearly frustrated. Words were flying fast. "This new policy just doesn't make sense. It came out of nowhere, and no one even asked us." The manager didn't interrupt or defend. She leaned forward slightly and said, "Can you help me understand which part felt most off to you?" The energy shifted. The employee slowed down, surprised. "It's the rollout," he said. "It just felt like it hit us out of nowhere." This question didn't give up control. It invited collaboration. It didn't say, "You're wrong." It said, "Show me your view." Asking, "Can you help me understand?" softens resistance. It creates a moment of partnership instead of opposition. It allows space for emotion without making the conversation personal. Lesson: when tension rises, don't argue. Ask to understand. Most people just want to be seen before they can hear you. 7. Offer choices, not commands. Let people steer their own yes. A couple is getting ready to leave a dinner party. One says, "Want to head out now or stay for one more drink?" Same goal, different delivery. And the result? No tension. The brain doesn't just care what's being asked. It cares how much control it has in choosing. That's why offering options works better than giving orders. Even small choices restore a sense of freedom. Instead of, "You need to calm down," say, "Do you want to take a breath or talk it through?" Instead of, "Let's go," say, "You feel ready or want to take a few more minutes." People don't push back because of what you're saying. They push back when they feel pushed. Lesson: want less resistance? Offer choice. Let them drive the moment, even if you pick the road. 8. Hold eye contact while listening. The kind of presence that calms. A young employee walked into her manager's office after hours, hesitant. She had something hard to say, something that had been building up. As she began speaking, slowly, awkwardly, cautiously, her manager didn't interrupt. He didn't glance at his phone or check the clock. He just looked at her, listened, eyes steady, quiet, open. When she finished, she looked relieved, not because the issue was solved, but because she hadn't been left alone in it. Sustained, soft eye contact tells the speaker, "You don't have to fight for space. I'm right here." It doesn't dominate. It anchors. And when you do finally speak, your words matter more, because you proved you were fully present for theirs. Lesson: when someone's speaking from the heart, don't look away. Your eyes might be the reason they keep going. 9. Ask about childhood. It opens a door they didn't even know was closed. On a quiet balcony during a small gathering, two people who barely knew each other ended up chatting. Light small talk, passing observations, polite smiles. Then one asked, casually but with curiosity, "What were you like as a kid?" The other paused, not defensive, just thoughtful. Honestly, kind of obsessed with dinosaurs, like full-on T-Rex drawings all over the walls. The air shifted. The conversation turned. It wasn't small talk anymore. It was storytelling. Vulnerable, personal, real. Questions about childhood bypass roles and titles. They lead to unguarded memories. Before life became performance, therapists use it. So do great interviewers, good friends, and people who want to see beyond the surface. Lesson: if you want to know who someone really is, start where their story began. 10. Let your eyes smile. A quiet signal that says, "You're safe here." A woman walks up to a pharmacy counter. She's overwhelmed, juggling a prescription slip, her phone, and too many thoughts. She looks flustered, apologetic. The man behind the counter doesn't rush her. He meets her gaze with a soft, steady smile, not just with his mouth, but with his eyes. He doesn't say much, but something in her shoulders relaxes. She ends the call, quietly says thank you, and everything gets a little easier. A smile that reaches your eyes isn't performance, it's presence. It tells the person across from you, I'm not judging, I'm not rushing, I'm here. It doesn't need to be big, it just needs to be real. Lesson. The best way to calm someone isn't with your words, it's with how your eyes say, you're okay here. 11. Use even if. Shrink fear by walking through it. Two colleagues stood outside a meeting room. One was nervously pacing, clutching notes. I don't think I'm ready. What if they tear it apart? The other didn't reassure or deny. He just said, even if they do, you'll still leave with a stronger version than what you walked in with. And somehow, that changed everything. The phrase, even if, doesn't fight. The fear it moves past it. It doesn't say the bad thing won't happen. It just says, you'll still be okay if it does. That makes doubt feel less like a trap and more like a stepping stone. Even if reframes the risk. It makes space for courage without demanding certainty. Lesson. Don't tell people their fear is wrong. Show them they'll still stand, even if it comes true. 12. Start with a compliment behind their back. The kind that finds its way back. At a team lunch, someone quietly told a colleague, you know, Alex really kept things together during that crisis last week. Calm, steady, just solid. Alex wasn't there. No one made a big deal of it. The compliment wasn't staged. But 2 days later, Alex was noticeably warmer, more open. Maybe he didn't even know why, but it mattered. Compliments given when someone's not around are powerful. They spread differently. No performance, no ego, just kindness that lingers. And when it circles back, it hits deeper. Because it wasn't meant to impress, it was meant to honor. Lesson. Say kind things behind someone's back. That's how respect becomes reputation. 13. Say their name when saying goodbye. Endings that make people feel seen. After a casual dinner between two coworkers, they both stood, ready to part ways. One of them smiled and said, thanks for dinner, Emily. It was really good catching up. Something about that moment landed. Emily looked up, smiled more genuinely than before, and replied with warmth that hadn't quite been there earlier. Using someone's name at the end of an interaction personalizes the memory. It brings closure not just to the conversation, but to the connection itself. People often remember how we leave a moment more than how we enter it. And hearing their name softly and sincerely tells them, this wasn't just a conversation. It was with you. Lesson. Always end with a name. It makes the goodbye feel real and the memory human. 14. Use future pacing. Help people try on a better version of tomorrow. A father and son sat on a park bench, takeaway coffee in hand. The son hesitated, talking in circles about whether to apply for a summer internship. I'll probably mess it up, he mumbled. His dad didn't correct him. He leaned back and asked, imagine if you actually got it. What would your first day look like? The boy paused. Then he smiled. I'd be nervous, but I think I'd feel kind of proud. Future pacing isn't about false hope. It's about opening a door so someone can peek through and see a possible future version of themselves. When you make someone imagine success, even for a second, it becomes easier to believe in it. You're not forcing change. You're inviting it to feel real. Lesson. When someone doubts, don't push them forward. Let them visit the future and walk themselves in. 15. Frame your suggestion as a question. The mind listens differently when it chooses. Two coworkers were debating a tough project. One was hesitant, listing every reason it might fail. The other didn't push. He asked, what would it look like if you led this one? The energy changed. The first paused. Saturday back. Thought. Because it wasn't a challenge. It wasn't pressure. It was a question that let the idea feel like theirs. When you plant an idea as a question, people consider it with curiosity, not defensiveness. Their brain moves with you, not against you. And that shift is where real buy-in starts. Lesson. Don't hand someone your idea. Offer it like a question and let them pick it up on their own. 16. Mirror their energy before shifting it. Meet them where they are first. After a long shift, a frustrated employee sat down, venting to their manager. The tone was sharp, the pace fast, shoulders tense. No one listens. No one cares. Nothing's working. The manager didn't correct or calm. He just leaned in and said, with the same low, urgent tone, "That sounds exhausting." It landed. The employee nodded, still tense a boot less alone. Only then, gradually, the manager slowed his voice, softened his tone. The conversation followed. People don't shift because we tell them to. They shift when they feel understood, and that means pacing them first. When you start where they are, you earn the right to guide where they're going. Lesson: don't calm someone from the outside. Match their rhythm, then lead them gently into a better one. 17. Speak in stories, not points. People won't remember data, but they'll remember a scene. In a shared office kitchen, a frustrated new hire sat across from a senior teammate during lunch. "I keep doing the right thing," she said, "but it's like none of it lands." The senior paused, then said, "I had a boss once who never gave feedback. For months, I thought I was invisible. Then one day, I changed one line in a report, and he forwarded it to the whole team without a word. That was his version of well done." The younger woman laughed softly. "Seriously?" He nodded. "Yeah, I stopped waiting for applause after that. No bullet points, no advice, just a story, but it shifted how she saw things. Facts inform. Stories transform. They bypass resistance. They wrap truth in memory. Lesson: if you want something to stick, don't explain it. Let them feel it through a story. 18. Ask, "What would you do if you were me?" Give them ownership of the solution. A conversation was going nowhere. Two coworkers sat in a quiet conference room, stuck on how to move forward with a tricky proposal. One of them paused, then leaned in and asked, "What would you do if you were me?" The energy shifted. The other blinked, caught off guard, then slowly began to offer ideas. By flipping the frame, you invite someone to think with you, not at you. You place them in your shoes. It moves them from criticizing to collaborating. You're not just asking for an answer. You're inviting responsibility without force. Lesson: when stuck, don't defend your position. Ask them to take it and see what happens. 19. Don't interrupt. They'll think you're wiser than you are. In a quiet co-working lounge, one colleague started explaining a messy situation. It was emotional, long-winded, unclear. The other didn't interrupt, didn't nod excessively, just waited. After a while, the first one laughed and said, "I'm not even sure I made sense." The listener replied calmly, "You did." Then offered one sentence clear, simple, spot on. Sometimes, the smartest thing you can do isn't speak, it's wait. Silence gives weight to what you eventually say. It frames you as thoughtful, not reactive. People listen more carefully to those who don't rush to be heard. Lesson: you don't have to speak fast to sound smart. Just wait long enough to make it matter. 20. Smile slightly before your joke. It tells them it's safe to laugh. Two coworkers were having lunch. The mood was a little stiff still, recovering from an awkward team meeting earlier in the week. One of them stirred their drink and said with a tiny smirk, "I think this place seasons their food with sarcasm instead of salt." The other paused, then laughed genuinely. The atmosphere softened. It wasn't the joke, it was the way it was delivered. The small smile before the line signaled, "This is light. You can laugh with me." A tiny smile before a joke makes humor feel safe. It lowers the stakes. It makes connection easier. Lesson: if you want your humor to land, signal it first. Smile with your eyes before you speak with your words. 21. Use the pause to anchor attention. Stillness speaks louder than sound. Two friends sat in a noisy cafe, deep into a conversation about one of them leaving their job. Mid-sentence, the speaker placed their hand gently on the tablet, not loud, not abrupt, just grounded. The other's gaze, which had been drifting, came back immediately. They listened more carefully after that. That small gesture, resting a hand calmly on the table, became an anchor. It recentered the moment. In group conversations or distracted meetings, anchoring with a pause or steady gesture reclaims presence. It doesn't interrupt, it refocuses. The body often leads where words can't. Lesson: when words float away, let your stillness pull people back. 22. Lower your voice a note to be quiet, but to be heard. At a community event, a disagreement broke out over logistics. Voices began to rise. The room's energy climbed with them. Then one person spoke, not louder, but lower. Calm, controlled, measured. Suddenly, people stopped talking over each other. Heads turned. The tension started to dissolve. In chaos, quiet draws attention more than volume ever can. When everyone is shouting, the one who speaks softly becomes the center. Lowering your voice isn't submission, it's signal. It tells the room, this matters more than the noise. Lesson: don't raise your volume to compete, drop your tone to lead. 23. Act like you already belong. People follow calm confidence. She walked into the networking event without knowing anyone, but instead of hovering, she picked up a stray napkin on the table, straightened a stack of business cards, and said to someone nearby, "Have you tried that weird green dip yet?" They laughed. "No idea what's in it, but I'm in." In that moment, she stopped being a guest. She became part of the room. When you act like you belong, people respond as if you do, not because of status, but because of ease. Confidence doesn't always come from being invited. Sometimes it comes from gently taking responsibility for the space around you. Lesson: don't wait to be welcomed, to move like you already are. 24. Compliment indirectly. Praise that travels farther than your voice. At a company offsite, one team lead quietly told another, "By the way, I heard the way you handled that client was seriously graceful." Impressive stuff. He didn't say it to the person, just to someone near them, and then walked away. 2 days later, that person was noticeably more open, warmer, not because they were flattered, but because they'd heard the compliment came from behind their back. Praise given in absence holds more weight than praise given to impress. It feels truer. It feels earned. Lesson: say something kind when they're not there, and let the echo do the work. 25. End with a compliment. Let the last thing linger with warmth. After venting for 20 minutes about a failed project, one coworker stood to leave the break room. The other, who had mostly just listened, added softly as they reached the door, "By the way, your last pitch? People are still talking about it. You set the tone for that whole quarter." The frustrated one blinked, then smiled. "Thanks. I needed that." We often underestimate the impact of what we say last, but final words frame entire memories. They linger. They echo. Even when the conversation was heavy, a sincere compliment at the end changes how the whole moment is remembered. Lesson: leave them with something kind. That's what they'll carry with them. 26. Frame what you send at what they feel. In a quiet cafe, one friend noticed the other staring into her cup, jaw tight. She didn't ask, "Are you upset?" She just said, "You've been stirring that tea for 5 minutes without sipping, and your shoulders haven't moved since we sat down." The tension broke. "I didn't realize I was doing that," the friend said. "Yeah, I'm a bit overwhelmed." Describing what you observe allows someone to recognize their own emotion without being told what they feel. It's gentler, less invasive, more effective. People don't always want interpretation. They want space to understand themselves. Lesson: don't name their feelings. Just mirror the moment and let them fill in the rest. 27. Mirror their breathing. Calm that travels without sound. After a tough call, a man sat on the bench outside his office, shoulders hunched, breathing shallow. A colleague came out, sat beside him, and didn't say a word. She just sat and breathed, slowly, gently, matching him at first, then slowing her own rhythm. He didn't notice at first, but after a few minutes, he was breathing slower too, less panic, more presence. When someone's overwhelmed, words don't always reach them, but breath does. Nervous systems sync without needing instructions. Lesson: don't rush to fix what's breaking. Just breathe beside it and let calm pass between bodies. 28. Ask, can you tell me more? Curiosity that replaces conflict. After a long day, a couple sat in silence at the dinner table. Finally, one of them said, I just don't feel like you're really here anymore. The other started to react, ready to explain, defend, correct, but instead, they paused and said, can you tell me more about what that's been like for you? The anger faded, the air cleared, the conversation softened. Asking for more doesn't mean agreeing. It means creating space for truth. It tells the other person their feelings matter more than winning the moment. Lesson: before defending yourself, ask for more. What they say next might be what they were truly trying to tell you. 29. Say, that reminds me of a story. And suddenly, they lean in. In the middle of a frustrating lunch break conversation, one coworker vented, no one listens in meetings. I speak, and it's like I'm invisible. The other nodded thoughtfully and said, that reminds me of a story. She leaned back and continued, there was a guy at my old job, barely said a word in meetings, but when he did, people listened. Eventually, I asked him why. He said, I stopped trying to sound smart. I only spoke when it actually mattered to me. There was a pause. The energy changed. Storytelling invites someone into a shared emotional space without instructing them. It sidesteps defensiveness and replaces it with quiet recognition. Lesson: if advice won't land, tell a story. It offers the same wisdom with less resistance. 30. Comment on the atmosphere not. The person at the checkout line. A woman stood with arms crossed, eyes forward, clearly tense. The man behind her glanced around and said gently, feels like the kind of day where everyone's got their shoulders up by their ears. No judgment, no direct comment, just a shared observation. Her posture softened. When people feel exposed, commenting directly on their behavior can make them shut down. But noticing the space you both share allows tension to release without making them defensive. Lesson: speak to the room, not the person. Let them walk into the truth on their own. 31. Ask, what are you thinking right now? Unlock the invisible wall. Two colleagues sat in silence during a pitch review. One had just finished talking, but the other hadn't responded, just stared into space. Instead of pushing forward, the speaker leaned in and asked softly, what are you thinking right now? The quiet one blinked. I'm wondering if we're about to waste 3 weeks on something that won't land. And just like that, the conversation got honest. Asking what someone is thinking brings the unsaid into the room, not with force but with invitation. Lesson: when things go quiet, ask what's behind it. You'll often find the thing they were too polite to admit until you made space for it. 32. Frame with scarcity. Only a few people know this. And suddenly, they care. At a coffee shop, two friends chatted about a new app one had just discovered. It's still kind of underground, she said. Only a few people know about it, but it's going to be huge. The friend leaned in, interested. Scarcity captures attention, not because of manipulation, but because of psychology. When something feels rare, our minds value it more. Used gently, this framing can make everyday insights feel special, like they're not just information, they're access. Lesson: if you want someone to lean in, don't just share knowledge, frame it like a secret. 33. Ask, what made you say that? Find the root, not just the reaction. Two coworkers wrapped up a tense conversation when one suddenly said, I just think leadership's kind of checked out lately. It landed hard. Awkward silence. Instead of pushing back or brushing it off, the other paused and asked gently, what made you say that? There was a beat. Then, I sent in a proposal last week. No one replied. It felt like it didn't matter. The tension eased not because the issue disappeared, but because it was finally understood. Asking what made you say, that opens a doorway. It shifts the focus from the statement to the story behind it. Most of the time, frustration hides a feeling. and this question helps reveal it. Lesson: when someone says something sharp, don't react. Ask where it came from and help them unpack it safely. 34. Let them say no. That's how they'll choose yes. At a hardware store, a young man stood with a list, scanning shelves. An employee approached and said, "You probably don't need help, do you?" The man chuckled. "No, I'm good." Then paused. "Actually, where's the cork?" By giving him an easy out, the employee made it easier to opt in. When people feel control, they feel safe. And safety often leads to cooperation. Letting someone decline builds trust. Ironically, it makes them more open to saying yes in their own terms. Lesson: people say yes more often when they're free to say no. 35. Let them finish their sentence. Give them space to arrive. In a team meeting, one person began explaining an idea, slowly finding their words. Before they finished, someone else jumped in to finish the sentence. It was meant to help, but it didn't. The speaker paused, looked down. The sentence never quite returned. Letting someone finish doesn't just show patience, it shows respect for their process. Sometimes, we don't even know what we really think until we've said it out loud all the way through. Interrupting even kindly cuts the thread. Lesson: don't assume where their sentence is going. Let them land it, then respond. 36. Touch the table. Anchor the room without raising your voice. In a busy meeting room, one team member was sharing something important, but the room was restless. People were checking phones, whispering, fidgeting. Mid-sentence, she placed her palm gently on the table. The room quieted. Eyes turned back. No loud voice, no demand, just presence anchored. Sometimes a grounded gesture reclaims attention more effectively than sound. The body speaks, and people listen. Lesson: when the room drifts, don't shout. Let your stillness call them back. 37. Use we instead of you. From blame to bond in a single word. After a long day, two roommates discovered the door had been left unlocked. One could have said, "You forgot to lock up again." But instead, they said, "Looks like we forgot to lock the door." And just like that, tension was avoided. Shifting from you to we doesn't change the facts, but it completely changes the emotional weight. You isolates. We includes. Even if the responsibility belongs more to one person, framing it together keeps the connection intact. People don't resist accountability, they resist being alone in it. Lesson: when something goes wrong, bring people in. Let we carry the weight. 38. Pretend you're the host. Confidence doesn't wait to be invited. She didn't know many people at the party. The host was across the room. Everyone seemed mid-conversation. Instead of waiting, she refilled the chips, straightened a stack of napkins, and asked the guy next to her, "Have you tried this green dip? I've committed to it now." They laughed. They talked. The circle widened. That's the magic of acting like you belong. Not loudly, not for attention, but with small acts of ownership. When you tend to a space, people respond like you've always been part of it. Lesson: don't wait for someone to bring you in. Be the reason the room opens. 39. Anchor attention with a number. Start high to make anything feel light. Two friends sat planning a trip. One said, "Flights to this place were going for $1,200 at first." The other raised her eyebrows. "But I just saw them for $500 yesterday." Suddenly, $500 didn't feel expensive, it felt like a win. This is the anchoring effect. When the first number we hear is high, everything after it feels lighter. It's not manipulation, it's mental framing. And it works in casual conversations just as well as it does in sales or negotiation. Lesson: lead with a high anchor. The next number will feel like relief. 40. Be interested, not interesting. Let them be the story worth telling. On a park bench outside a bookstore, two strangers struck up a conversation. One asked, "Is that book any good?" The other said yes, then mentioned it was her third time reading it. Instead of offering his own opinion, the first person asked, "What keeps you coming back to it?" And that changed everything. Being interested invites depth. It lowers defenses. It gives the other person permission to share, to reflect, to reveal something real. Trying to be interesting centers yourself, but being curious centers connection. Lesson: don't try to impress, ask with real curiosity. That's how people remember how you made them feel. 41. Lower the volume to command the room. Quiet draws focus faster than loud. In the back seat of a cab, a friend leaned forward to ask the driver a question. Music was blaring, and the driver was mid-call, speaking loudly. But instead of matching the noise, she asked softly, "Would you mind turning this down just a little?" Something about her calm voice sliced through the chaos. The driver paused, ended his call, lowered the volume, and nodded. We instinctively mirror tone. Lowering your voice, especially in loud environments, invites others to meet you where you are. It resets the rhythm, not through control but contrast. Lesson: in a noisy world, speak softer. It makes people listen harder. 42. Count to 3 before reacting to emotion. Let the heat pass before you move. At the grocery store checkout, a customer snapped at the cashier for scanning an item twice. The air tensed. The cashier didn't react right away. She took a quiet breath. 1, 2, 3. Then calmly said, "Let me fix that for you." The customer's posture softened. The anger faded. The moment passed. Reacting immediately often adds fuel, but a 3-second pause gives emotion time to settle. It creates a buffer between stimulus and responsive space where clarity can emerge. Lesson: when emotions spike, let the first wave pass. Breathe, then choose your next move. 43. Ask them to teach you. Respect is often built through curiosity. In the copy room, 2 co-workers stood by a printer. One muttered, "Tray 3 always jams." The other smiled and said, "Sounds like you've mastered this beast. Can you show me what to do when it happens?" It wasn't flattery. It was curiosity. The first coworker lit up, stepping into the role of teacher. No title needed. Asking someone to teach you something small gives them a moment of dignity. It tells them, "I see value in you." And that kind of recognition lands deeper than compliments. Lesson: when you want someone to open up, let them show you what they know. 44. Smile before you feel it. Sometimes the feeling follows the gesture. Walking through the park, someone passed a neighbor and instinctively smiled. The neighbor smiled back. A few steps later, the first person realized they actually felt better, lighter, calmer, more human. But it didn't start from inside. It started with a smile. This is emotional feedback at work. Sometimes, the body leads the mind. A smile signals safety, even before the heart catches up. Not fake, not forced, just gently offered. Lesson: smile not because you feel good, but because you want to. The feeling often follows. 45. Break the script. One unexpected line rewrites the entire moment. A man stepped into the elevator. Another was already inside. The usual nods, the polite silence. Then instead of, "How's it going?" the man said, "I once saw someone rescue a duck from a fountain using a traffic cone." The other blinked, laughed, and replied, "You win. That's the best opening line I've heard all week." The moment became real. Breaking the script means gently stepping outside expected patterns. Not to shock, but to awaken. Most social moments run on autopilot, but a surprising, playful shift resets attention and invites connection. Lesson: change one line, and the whole scene changes. Surprise makes people stay awake. 46. Say nothing, just nod. The simplest way to hold space. At a quiet coffee shop, 2 friends sat together. One began talking slowly, nervous about something painful from their past. The other didn't interrupt, didn't offer advice, didn't even say, "I understand." They just nodded, softly, with presence. The speaker kept going, not because they were being led, but because they felt held. Sometimes, the best thing you can do is create space that doesn't need to be filled. A nod says, "I'm here. Keep going." That's often more powerful than the perfect response. Lesson: don't try to carry their words. Just make sure they land safely. 47. Compliment their effort, not just the result. After a presentation that didn't land, one colleague said to another, "I know it wasn't what you hoped, but I saw how much you worked on that opening. You really tried to connect." The other exhaled. That mattered more than any score. Most people only get praised when something works, but being seen for trying when it doesn't is often more healing. Recognizing intention honors the heart behind the effort, and that kind of gratitude doesn't fade. Lesson: don't wait for success to praise someone. Appreciate what they meant to do. 48. Use open palms. Show you have nothing to hide. During a difficult conversation, one person placed their hands softly, palms up, on the table. No posturing, no fists, just open. The tension lowered. The other relaxed. From ancient instinct to modern communication, open palms signal safety. They say, "I'm not hiding anything." They invite trust, not by declaration, but by posture. It's not about performance. It's about presence that's aligned from body to tone. Lesson: before people believe your words, they need to believe your stance. 49. Say, "You seem like," let them see themselves through your eyes. In a hallway after a conference, two attendees struck up a light conversation. After a few minutes, one of them smiled and said, "You seem like the kind of person who always notices when someone's left out." The other looked surprised. "No one's ever said that to me. But yeah, I guess I do." That sentence, "you seem like," isn't a compliment or a guess. It's a reflection. It shows attention, and it gives the other person a gentle mirror to consider who they are. Even when it's slightly off, it creates space for connection, for clarification, for depth. Lesson: show someone how you see them and give them a chance to step into it. 50. Sit diagonally, not directly. Remove tension without saying a word. Two colleagues met at a cafe to discuss a project. They sat directly across from each other. The energy felt stiff like a face-off. Then one of them subtly shifted their chair to a diagonal angle. The conversation loosened. The other mirrored the posture without realizing. Facing someone directly can feel intense, even when there's no conflict. A slight angle shifts the dynamic from confrontation to collaboration. It tells the body, "We're on the same side." Lesson: connection lives in angles. Don't face off, sit beside. 51. Fake a deadline. Urgency clears the fog. A coworker was dragging their feet on a report. Nothing urgent, so nothing moved. Then someone said, "Hey, can we wrap this by 3 p.m.? I've got another deadline right after." The work got done. The deadline wasn't real, but the focus it created was. Humans respond to time pressure. It's not about manipulation, it's about focus. Deadlines shrink the field of options and push us to choose. Used ethically, they create clarity. Lesson: when things stall, set a clock. Even a soft one helps people move. 52. Nod while listening. It tells them to keep going. In the middle of a difficult story, someone paused, unsure whether they were saying too much. The listener didn't interrupt, they just nodded. A small movement. Enough. The speaker continued. Nodding says, "I'm with you." It doesn't need words. It doesn't need analysis. It just holds the space so the other person can step fully into it. And sometimes, that's all they were waiting for. Lesson: show them it's okay to continue without saying a word. 53. Let silence stretch 1 second longer. That's when the truth comes out. In a meeting room, a colleague had just finished explaining a mistake. The other person didn't jump in, they just waited. Not awkwardly, just 1 second longer than expected. And in that extra second, the speaker added, "I should have told you sooner. I just didn't want to admit I was behind." Silence, when used with intention, invites more. People fill it not out of discomfort, but because it feels like there's room to. That single beat longer allows truth to emerge, not rushed, not forced. Lesson: don't rush the pause. Let it settle. The most honest part often comes after the first sentence ends. 54. Say, most people don't know this, and watch curiosity lean in. Over dinner, a colleague mentioned an obscure feature in a piece of software. Most people don't know this, he said, but it has a built-in timer that resets the cache every 24 hours. Suddenly, everyone at the table was listening. Most people don't know this acts like a key that opens ears. Not because the content is always rare, but because the phrasing taps into our instinct to value insider knowledge. It primes the brain to treat the information as special. Lesson: if you want someone to pay attention, frame the moment like a secret worth hearing. 55. Use, you probably already know this. Offer correction without ego. Two colleagues reviewed a draft together. One paused and said, you probably already know this, but this section could land a little smoother. The other nodded. Yeah, I thought the same. There was no tension, just collaboration. You probably already know this. Softens the edge. It preserves the other person's dignity while still sharing your view. It's not condescending, it's considerate. It invites alignment, not defensiveness. Lesson: when you want to offer input, protect their pride. The message lands better when respect goes first. 56. Use tell me more. Gently invite them past the surface. A couple sat across from each other after a hard day. One finally said, I just feel like you're not really here. The other started to respond but then paused, took a breath, and said, tell me more. The conversation shifted. Walls dropped. Something real entered the room. Tell me more doesn't pry. It doesn't push. It simply creates room. And sometimes that's all someone needs to say what they really meant. Lesson: when you sense there's more beneath the words, ask them to keep going, gently. 57. Ask for additional help to build trust and influence. Two students had just finished a group project. One turned to the other and said, quick question, how would you have handled that part where the plan almost fell apart? No ego, no flattery, just genuine curiosity. The other responded thoughtfully, and something shifted. The dynamic moved from passive teammates to collaborative equals. When you ask for advice, you're not just getting input. You're giving the other person a sense of value. And in turn, they begin rooting for your success. Why? Because they helped shape it. This is the Benjamin Franklin effect. When someone helps you, they subconsciously invest in you. Lesson: don't just ask for help, ask what they would do. People support what they've helped create. 58. Sit at the edge of your seat. Posture that signals presence. Two friends sat at a bus stop. The conversation was light. One of them suddenly leaned forward just slightly, elbows on knees. Without thinking, the other mirrored the motion. Suddenly, the tone shifted. Words became more deliberate. Listening became deeper. The conversation changed shape. Leaning forward signals care. It tells the other person, I'm with you. It sharpens attention not by force, but by focus. We read posture faster than speech. Lesson: if you want to show up fully, let your body arrive first. 59. Speak slower than the room. Rhythm makes people lean in. During a casual dinner, stories overlapped and voices bounced fast. Then one person chimed in out louder, not sharper but slower. So this might sound random, she said, but has anyone actually read the instructions on microwave popcorn? People chuckled and listened. Speaking slowly doesn't signal hesitation. It signals thought. In a world of fast takes and rushed words, a slow sentence feels like intention. And that makes it easier to follow and remember. Lesson: when you slow your voice, people slow their minds and meet you where meaning lives. 60. Ask them to correct you. It builds quiet authority. At lunch, a manager said something about a timeline that wasn't quite right. The newer teammate corrected him nervously. The manager smiled and said, good catch, I appreciate that. From that point on, the teammate contributed more freely, not just because they were allowed to, but because they were invited to. Letting someone correct you shows strength, not weakness. It signals confidence, trust, and shared ownership. It turns hierarchy into partnership. Lesson: let others fix your errors. That's how they start seeing themselves as part of the outcome. 61. Ask, what do you think your younger self would be proud of? Reflection opens the heart. Late night. A quiet booth in a nearly empty cafe. Two old friends sat with tired eyes and half-finished coffee. One leaned back and asked, what do you think your younger self would be proud of in you today? The other froze, then slowly said, I think the way I started choosing peace, even when I could have chosen to fight. The mood shifted. It wasn't small talk anymore, it was a moment. This kind of question bypasses status, plans, even logic. It goes straight to identity. It helps people remember who they wanted to be and how far they've come. Lesson: don't just ask what they do, ask what their younger self would celebrate. That's where the gold is. 62. Let the last word linger. The end defines the memory. As the evening wrapped up, one friend stood to leave a small dinner party. They turned at the door and said softly, you know, I always feel lighter after nights like this. No follow-up, no over-explaining, just that. And that's what everyone remembered the next day. The human brain assigns extra weight to endings. The last word often frames the entire interaction. It doesn't have to be deep, just real. Endings shape memory more than beginnings do. Lesson: leave with something sincere. People often carry your last words longer than anything else. 63. Ask, what are you afraid to want? Vulnerability invites truth. In a quiet moment after a long conversation, one friend asked another, what are you afraid to want right now? There was a pause. Long. Then a deep exhale. I'm afraid to want to slow down, the other said, because if I do, everything might fall apart. Some truths don't come out through logic. They come out through tenderness. This kind of question creates space not for answers, but for honesty. It gently invites people to name what they've buried. Lesson: ask about the want behind the silence. That's where real conversation begins. 64. Say their name in writing. It makes your words land softer. A manager replied to a long email with a brief message. Thanks for this, Arjun. I'll take a closer look this afternoon. Just one word, his name, but it changed the whole tone. Even in writing, names hold power. They create presence. They say, this was written for you, not copied, not generic. And when things get tense, using a name brings the person, not just the role, back into focus. Lesson: don't just send a message, send it to someone by name. 65. Frame your request as a choice. Let them say yes without losing control. Two friends were trying to leave a party. One said, you ready to head out now, or want to stay a bit longer? Same goal. No pressure. By offering a choice, the question gave control without giving up direction. When people are given agency, they stop bracing. Do you want to do this today or tomorrow? Feels better than, we need this done today. Want to take a walk or keep talking here, invites rather than instructs. Choice creates cooperation. It doesn't weaken the request, it strengthens the connection. Lesson: let them choose the path even when you pick the destination. 66. Ask about their story, not their job. Two strangers shared a bench at a train station. One asked, so what do you do? The other answered, briefly, politely. Then came a different question. What's your story? And something changed. Jobs define. Stories reveal. When you ask for someone's story, you invite a fuller version of them into the room. One that includes loss, luck, mistakes, and meaning. Most people are aching to be seen beyond their role. Lesson: don't reduce someone to their title. Ask for their story and listen like it matters. 67. Ask for help like a teammate. Not a burden, but a shared effort. At a shared table in a cafe, one coworker leaned over and said, hey, I'm stuck on this part, can we take a quick look together? Not needy, not formal, just human. When you ask for help like a collaborator, people join without resistance. You're not dumping your task, you're inviting them into a moment of joint clarity. It's not about the words, it's about tone. The with me instead of for me. Lesson. Frame your ask as a shared moment. People don't mind helping when it feels like partnership. 68. Ask, what would it look like if? Let them imagine the solution. Two coworkers debated a risky idea. One was skeptical, listing every reason it wouldn't work. The other paused and asked, what would it look like if it did work? Silence, then thought, then, eventually, possibility. Framing a question this way doesn't demand agreement, it invites imagination. It sidesteps resistance by asking someone to picture, not decide. That mental picture often leads them to discover their own reasons to support the idea. Lesson. Don't argue people into yes. Let them imagine it first. 69. Raise your eyebrows. The smallest signal of I see you. Walking through the office, someone passed a coworker they barely knew. As they made brief eye contact, they gave a tiny raise of the eyebrows, just a quick lift. The coworker smiled, nodded back, and straightened slightly. That one micro-expression created connection without a single word. Raising your eyebrows in greeting is a universal primal signal. You're seen. You're not alone here. It's nonverbal acknowledgement, at its simple stand, most effective. Lesson. When in doubt, lift your brows slightly. It's one of the fastest ways to say, you matter right now. 70. Show micro-vulnerability, then strength. That's how people trust you. After a shaky client call, a team member said, I thought I totally bombed that call this morning. Then added, but I reviewed the notes at lunch, and I've got a revised plan that I think will really work. That first sentence made the second one land. Small, calm admissions of struggle don't weaken your authority, they humanize it. When vulnerability comes before strength, the strength feels earned. Lesson. Show where you stumbled, then show how you stood up. That's what makes your next step believable. 71. Point your feet. They reveal what your mouth doesn't say. At a crowded networking event, two people were deep in conversation, or so it seemed. But while their heads were facing each other, one person's feet were angled toward the exit. Minutes later, they left mid-sentence. Feet rarely lie. They point toward interest, urgency, escape, or invitation. Even when your words say one thing, your posture speaks louder. If you want someone to feel included, turn your stance toward them. If you want to read someone's intent, don't just look at their eyes, check where their toes are headed. Lesson. When it comes to attention, your shoes speak first. Let them point where your care is. 72. Let them pick the timing. People open up when it's on their terms. A manager caught their team member packing up to leave and asked, do you have a quick minute to chat? The team member looked drained. The manager noticed and added, or we can talk in the morning if that's better. The team member nodded in relief. Tomorrow's perfect. By offering timing as a choice, the conversation later became more honest and more productive. Sometimes, the barrier isn't the topic, it's the moment. Lesson. When you give someone control over timing, they'll often give you more of themselves. 73. Let them speak first. That's how you gain direction. Two people sat down to negotiate a tricky deal. One of them was eager to make their points clear, but instead of jumping in, they said, why don't you start? The other began speaking, revealing more than they realized. Priorities, tone, pressure points. Now, the first speaker had a map. Letting someone go first doesn't mean giving up control. It means gathering information. When they speak first, you shape your response with precision, not assumption. Lesson. Don't rush to set the tone. Let them speak and use their rhythm to guide yours. 74. Say, you seem like the kind of person who... Reflection, not flattery. During small talk at a dinner party, someone said, you seem like the kind of person who always knows where the snacks are hidden. It wasn't deep, but it was personal, playful, true enough to stick. That phrase, you seem like, creates a mirror. It shows that you're paying attention and invites them to either confirm or clarify. People rarely feel seen, but when you offer even a small reflection, it opens space for more real conversation. Lesson: see something in the man, say it. Even if it's small, it matters. 75. Use even if. Shrink the fear by making space for it. Before a big presentation, one teammate said, "What if I freeze up?" The other replied, "Even if you do, you'll still be the most prepared person in the room." And somehow, that made it feel survivable. Even if doesn't argue with fear. It nods to it, makes space for it, and then quietly moves past it. It says, "Yes, that could happen, and here's why you'll be okay anyway." Lesson: don't dismiss doubt, walk through it with them. That's what makes courage real.